Greetings, you who are the one we have been waiting for. While you were rolling your blunt, 120 conservative judges were appointed to the federal appellate court system. This fact is not as exciting as, say, the fact about the 885 people who were killed by cops in 2019. Nor is it as exciting as, say, the fact about the over 3,000 communities known to have municipal water systems with lead contamination rates higher than Flint. But this boring fact is just as deadly because these judges are the white power guardians whose courts will decide on tens of thousands of cases involving housing, employment, environmental racism, and a variety of social and racial justice legal challenges that directly determine whether you have or do not have life-changing and life-saving opportunities. While you were doing as you were trained and preparing for the holidays, 45,000 people died merely because they lacked health care. And despite the media noise in which white society congratulates itself because it has at last reversed its racist drug sentencing and mass incarceration policy on paper, the school-to-prison pipeline has not narrowed, it has widened. Our children are being criminalized at staggering rates, often charged, sentenced, and imprisoned with adults, and subject to brutal and traumatizing conditions, among which is solitary confinement. That's when you are put into a cell that is 8 feet by 5 feet and has steel walls and metal slab for a door, and you're kept there for 23 to 24 hours a day. The United Nations Convention on Torture and Degrading Treatment and Punishment and the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for the Treatment of Prisoners has decreed that solitary confinement is psychological and physical torture and should be banned. But it continues in the US, and you can be put into it, is usually called the box, for any reason or no reason. For something as simple as having more postage stamps in your possession than the rules allow, you can be charged with violation and sentenced to the box for 10 days to virtually forever. This is not a fictional, figurative example. This is the actual case. In those prisons that house our adolescents, like say in Coxsackie, New York, children are being given an alternative to solitary confinement. They can instead voluntarily take a psychotropic drug like Haldol, Prolaxin, Thorazine. This is not a figurative example either. Our children first are put into these torturous conditions, solitary confinement, and if they don't want to go, then they can take a psychotropic drug that cannot be supposedly forced. So, here, take it yourself. We can't make you take it, but here's an option. And this is done while we're preparing for the holidays. And while we're trying on the newest Nikes, thousands of public housing and low-income housing units were demolished. And according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, over 800,000 children have disappeared in the U.S. in 2019 alone. That's like 2,000 children a day. The official stats say that 37% of them are black. But since we know white subjugationism, white society is very image conscious, they don't want to be made to look bad, so the actual figure is probably higher, though 37% is quite enough. While you were at the club or the office party, the UN also determined that 40 million people in the US live in poverty, that Black people constitute 52% of the homeless population. 38% of our people are mired in extreme poverty. 12% live in deep, abject poverty. 48% of households headed by black women are below the poverty line, which is really a kind of generous, conservative percentage, because the official poverty line means that if you are a family of four and you make 1 penny more than $25,750 a year, you're not poor. If you're a single person and you make more than $12,490 a year, you're not below the poverty line. So, in any case, black women die from pregnancy-related complications at a rate 3 to 4 times higher than the national average. Though you might not have noticed because it wasn't mentioned during the halftime break of whatever game you were watching. In Missouri, the show me state, black drivers are 91% more likely to be stopped while driving. I guess because the cops in the show me state want to show us that we still have no rights that white society is bound to respect. In Georgia, 300,000 people were purged from the voting rolls. In Loudoun County, Alabama, untreated waste has caused a proliferation of hookworm disease, a disease usually found in the poorest developing countries. Now, that's interesting in itself. The description that this is a disease that usually occurs in developed countries, or developing countries rather, because these are terms that are part of the vocabulary of white subjugation. The idea that diseases, preventable diseases, epidemics are usual in some countries, horrific. Why is that okay for that to be the norm, usual? We just dismiss it because it's usual. And the word developing is a euphemism for exploited. But of course, white segregationism being so very image conscious, not when it's seen to be the monster that it is, and so it substitutes a politer term. In any case, that is the reality in Missouri, in Alabama, in Georgia, New York, wherever you can look. While we are at an office party or a club, while we are preparing for holidays, our people are being attacked. While we enjoying our lattes and our beers, or whatever it is you drink, I like smoothies myself, a special tax cut was issued for private jet owners. At the same time, we suffer the highest child poverty, infant mortality, incarceration, obesity, unemployment rate of any developed country in the world, which really means any exploiter country in the world. Indeed, the only rate that's going down for us is life expectancy. Now, this is the thing. In China, a curfew has been issued for video game playing for minors. In India, the video game players unknowns battleground has been banned. In France and Germany, other European countries, a restriction has been put on using cell phones. I think puberty. You cannot use a cell phone until puberty. Now, the reason for this is partly because of the known carcinogenic impact. In fact, right now, Samsung and Apple are being sued in class actions because the phones that they produce have an emission rate 500 times higher than the federal limit. In any case, there are the physical complications, but also, and this is my concern here, the psychological complications or impacts that these things are known to produce, that they shape or create psychopathic and psychotic behavior, sociopathic behavior. Now, we see this all the time with our youngsters. We see, because of those exposures, other exposures to chemicals in the foods they eat, the kind of unmusic that they self-genocide with constantly, they will look at somebody dying on the street and rather than help, take a video. And we see this and we're outraged. We see their indifference. But I ask you, how are we much better? We click and like and post and share what we see, all the horrors that our people are being subject to. I mentioned some of the things that happen here. Throughout the world, there's a campaign of genocide, there's famine throughout the world for our people. There's 1/4 of humanity is in a severe water crisis, means they do not have clean water, and water that some do have is scarce. Slavery is being conducted openly. And this also is part of the symptom of something going on with us. We have the audacity to be angry about slavery that occurred in 1819, but we see it unfold before our eyes, and what do? Why are we so indifferent? Unity is the answer. Very, very simple to do. In fact, here, initially, the campaign that we have, the African Unity Movement campaign, involves nothing more than taking a picture or a video with somebody, a friend or a stranger. Hey, I am so-and-so. I am so-and-so. We are united. And when the call for action comes, you're ready. Post it. And let us contact you later to help organize you so that we can mobilize to stop all the atrocities occurring against our people. If that is too much to ask, join us for further videos where we will examine what we can do to eliminate the problems that we have. But right now, I ask you to consider, how deep is your water? How true and strong is your commitment? Are we just making noise? Are we so bought off? Are things so easy for us now that we don't see that the bubble around us, just like, say, with the indigenous people in this country, they could not see that their time was coming. They were able to fish and hunt because something happened to some other tribe over there wasn't touching them. So they say, and now, of course, they see they're almost all but exterminated. This is the reality of us. Can we not see it? The urgency of the moment is just unprecedented, beyond parallel. So, that is what the what is. I love you. I ask you to take the challenge. United, we are impossible to defeat. But if we continue as we are, don't get fooled because you're cool right now, your career is okay right now. Ashe.